please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
I think it's possible to have more corrections.
On all 5 counts, the government has written to them asking for a response if lapses, if any, have been noticed.
Take the case of Punjab National Bank. The Indian government is going to step in and say, look, we will not allow this bank to get into trouble.
It was much expected, the correction, and one just needed to attribute some reason to it. It turned out to be, of course, this unfortunate event. The PNB fraud. Nothing has changed when you were bullish at 11,000, and nothing has changed when you're getting them 30% lower. So therefore, you should actually be buying them and sitting quietly as investment. A very important point, and that's again linked to the banking sector, is the near resolution, or in fact, more or less resolution of the biggest steel NPA that we had.
They put in a bid, and I think it could be a good bid.
We have been interested right from the beginning because they're in the eastern region, and we believe that there's a lot of synergy we can get out of these assets. We were told that we may hear something this week, so we'll wait for that.
Monday blues on Dalal Street. Sensex Nifty end 2/3 of a percentage point lower, dragged by all-round selling in Tata Steel, L&T, pharma stocks, oil companies. India underperforms Asian and European markets.
PNB falls for the 4th straight day, but several experts see value at lower levels. Meanwhile, CBI seals the bank's Brady House branch in Mumbai. Mehul Choksi's top aides resign following the investigations. Stock tanks over 7% in trade.
Private banks throw a lifeline to the bank index, contains the fall led by PSU banks. That index tanks between 1 to 7% in trade. Yes Bank, DCB end in the green.
Government writes to the Reserve Bank of India seeking details on the PNB fraud case. Asks if lapses were noticed on 5 counts, including those on the regulatory front. That is a CNBC TV18 exclusive.
And Tata Steel confirms to CNBC TV18 that it is in the fray for Bhushan Steel's assets. Experts, however, spar over the equity value of Bhushan Steel shares. That stock ends in upper circuit. Tata Steel loses over 5%. Well, those were the top 5 headlines from the day's trading action. Hello and welcome to Markets Today Talkback, the show where we tell you about 8 hours of trading in just 5 headlines. I'm Lata Venkatesh. With me, my colleague Prashant Nair. Hi, Prashant.
Hi, Lata. Another tough day for bulls. Over the next 30 minutes, as you said, we will discuss the top 5 market stories. Our experts will join in to answer those questions which you write in to us with. To answer the questions today, we have Prakash Devan and technical expert Ashwini Gujral. Gentlemen, thanks very much, both of you, for being here. But as always, we wrap up the day's events, day's trading action. And what a day. Capitulation, mid-session, and recovery towards close. Lata.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, extremely difficult to guess at each point. And clearly, the one thing that stood out is that we have been underperformers, and we remained that way today as well. We had not bad cues from Wall Street. And usually when there is no Wall Street action in the evening, which will not be there on Monday, actually the bulls have a field day in the past. But today, none of that. Asian markets did better. European markets were in the green. But none of that was having any impact on Indian markets. Indian indices clearly the worst performers, and within the indices it is the mid caps that have fallen over 1%, the advanced declines makes the point very clear. Almost 4 stocks in the red for 1 in the green. For what it is worth, a solace could be that all indices and many stocks ended off the day's lows. If that's anything to go by, we'll ask our experts. But what did you notice stock-wise?
You know, so to begin with, 85 points is how much the Nifty recovered from the day's lowest level. So that is actually pretty large. I mean, we still ended lower, but 85 off the lows. The Bank Nifty was off 273 points off the lows. I mean, those are the 2 numbers to remember from today. Big losses. I mean, so Nifty, PSU Bank, of course, top loser, it was down about 5.5%. It ended down 2.5%. So again, I mean, that just simply tells you over 50% of the losses on the index itself were recouped. Nifty Pharma was down 1.7%. Metals were down about 1.7%. Real estate, infrastructure, and autos were the other losers in terms of large sectoral losses. I don't think any sectoral index was actually in the green. PSU Bank's PNB You had Union Bank, you had Syndicate Bank, which were down. I mean, they're on your screen. Safe to assume that all of these basically recovered between 2 and 3% off from the lowest point, the respective lows. Indian Bank, Allahabad Bank, Bank of Baroda were the other ones. I mean, actually, in terms of the big movers, BOB and SBI, along with Reliance Industries, helped a fair bit of the recovery that we saw towards close. Actually, BOB was off 5% off the lows. SBI, I think, it recovered, what, 5% or so? Oh. I mean, from the lowest level, 268 or so. There was, of course, action in steel. Tata Steel, as we had reported earlier, has emerged as the front runner for Bhushan Steel. Bids opened sometime this week. Tata Steel was down 6%. Markets don't like the fact that they may be overpaying from compared to what the benchmarks out there are. Bhushan Steel was up 20%. That's the asset in question. JSW Steel was the other player that I think sold off in sympathy with Tata Steel as well. So keeping the list short today, but it mostly covered banks. Lata.
Okay, and steel companies,
and steel.
As you know. All right, let's get straight away to our experts. Ashwini, how significant is the recovery from the lows? Does it even give a temporary respite to the selling?
It was a very weak recovery. I don't think any sectoral index also got into the green. So just mild profit booking, and that was expected because there was a big sell-off on Friday. Then today in the morning, there was fairly climatic action. So it was expected. But I don't think this recovery will amount to too much. And overall, maybe 50-70 points on the Nifty further with a gap or something. And then again, the selling will start. The market bets also remain fairly weak. So the idea should be to keep selling on rallies till at least one intermediate high is crossed.
Okay, okay. And what would an intermediate high be?
See, basically, as of now, it is 10,600.
Okay.
But those levels will keep on coming lower as lower and lower intermediate highs are made.
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay, with that, let's get to the second headline of the day. PNB falls for the fourth straight day, but several experts see value at lower levels. Meanwhile, the CBI has sealed the bank's Brady House branch in Mumbai, where the scam took place. Separately, Mehul Choksi's top aides resigned following investigations in that company. The PNB stock itself has tanked over 7% today. Well, with that, we have, okay, let's hear out some of the experts who said that they find value. Sanjay Dutt of Quantum Securities was one of them. We also spoke with Mark Mobius on the PNB case.
I think it was much expected, the correction, and one just needed to attribute some reason to it. It turned out to be, of course, this unfortunate event. I don't think things are that, dreadful or that bad as yet, or they won't be at that bad. Corrective action is being put in place.
It's happening globally. Despite all of the regulatory efforts, you do have these cases. But it comes down to confidence. At the end of the day, if you take the case of Punjab National Bank, the Indian government is going to step in and say, look, we will not allow this bank to get into trouble. The banks are going to continue to survive and thrive. And I would focus on those banks that are improving their digital offering.
Okay, so I mean, if you're holding PNB shares, what should you be doing? I think it's a pretty relevant question. Actually, we have a specific query now. Rajan Desai has sent us a question on PNB. 500 shares is what he owns. He's bought the stock at 174 rupees. He has been holding the stock for a month now and is a short-term investor. Should he hold or sell? Too late to sell? Let's get some opinion in. Ashwini, what would you tell him? His cost is 174.
See, as far as I am concerned, I think this problem is structural. Banking is about people, and if your people are, unethical, bad, all sorts of bad decisions are getting taken, I can't foresee what the government will do, which will suddenly turn this around. You try privatizing, all these, bank unions will be on the street. It's not very easy to, reform all of this. If I were him, I would still move to a HDFC Bank or IndusInd Bank, etc. you'll at least save some money. These are now in clear bear markets, and as we saw even today, the market is not going to spare any of these or give them benefit of doubt. So all PSU banks will continue to fall.
Now, I take your point on the chap who has bought it at 174 rupees like Rajan Desai has. But, you know, it's precisely when there is fear that good bargains are also made. Prakash, any such bargains in PNB or any PSU bank?
Rather not as yet. I think PNB would see a little bit of, sell-off continue for the simple reason that the news flow is still absolutely very intense and hot around this. So till that subsides, I don't see any reason why there would probably be buying interest that comes back. And it will give a clear signal once a little bit of a consolidation is done. So at a price, everything is good. And I think once PNB probably reaches that 85 to 90 zones is where, the real buying would start coming closer to the book value of the stock. But interestingly, the PSU pack and the banking pack overall will offer a lot of promises from the NCLT resolution that's finally coming through, and we'll probably see the first large, case which is almost 1 lakh crores coming back into the system, of course fragmented across banks, but that is a clear indication that revival could mean a lot more than what we have penciled in at this point in time. So look at a South Indian bank, from the Bhushan twins, it gets a lot of money, which is almost like 22% of its NPAs which have been provided for. So, those are things which will kind of start taking center stage very soon, probably end of this week maybe. So I would look at switching into some of those banks rather than just wait for PNB to, recreate magic on the stock.
Okay. So, advice from both experts that it's not yet time to buy.
Let's stick with the banking space, and this is essentially the third headline today. Private banks threw a lifeline to the bank index. They contained the fall led by PSU banks, which essentially fell between 1 to 7% in trade. Amongst private banks, Yes Bank, DCB ended in the green. There was, of course, the big private bank bellwether HDFC Bank, which stood strong on one side with everything else on the other, pretty much. We have a question. Mr. PK Gope has 300 shares of Bank of Baroda. He's paid 170 rupees each for them. He's a long-term investor and he wants a view on the stock. BOB, mind you, along with SBI, are two other better sort of considered stocks from the PSU bank space, two banks from the PSU bank space which are well regarded. Prakash, what would your opinion be here on BOB?
I think it would be a very clear hold. This is one bank that's not found itself in the midst of all the messy NPA. I mean, of course, they were also part of the same NPA, climatic changes that we saw. But, when the ARQ was set in place, they were probably the first few to have had the change in management and that write-offs and a huge segment of provisioning that came in. So I think the balance sheet has already undergone repair earlier than the rest. And this is much more nimble as compared to an SBI to start, taking advantage of any kind of credit growth that will come through after the new norms have been put in place. So this is much more better place to face the challenges in the banking system than any other PSU bank. So definitely it's a hold.
Okay. Well, actually, the other challenge which just got hidden because of Punjab National Bank was the February 12th, Monday night circular from the Reserve Bank, making the NPA resolution process way more strict and leading to all this strategic debt restructuring, S4A cases,
all of them,
corporate debt restructuring, all of them into the NCLT process if they don't get completed in 6 months. As well, there is a doubt that even at the time they are being restructured, they will probably be NPA because they are restructured. It's not the old terms of the loan. So that way, the expectation or the fear is that there will be a lot more NPAs. And we have seen a number of banks, like brokerages like Credit Suisse, therefore, and even Macquarie saying that, the
NPAs
could balloon because of this. And so the capital required will now be not 2 lakh crore, but 3 lakh crore because of the accelerated recognition of NPAs and therefore provisioning. Okay, so that's also what is bedeviling many of these banks. We'll take a break on that note. Coming up, our experts are, of course, going to continue to be with us to answer your questions. And we will speak about the steel stocks, which were also in the news.
Welcome back. You're with us here on Markets Today Talkback. And we've been answering your questions with our guests. Prakash Devan and Ashwini Gujral have been doing that. We are through with 3 top stories for today. So let's get in straight to the fourth one. And this is the government which has written to the Reserve Bank of India, now seeking details on the PNB fraud case. It's asked if the lapses were noticed on 5 counts, including those on the regulatory front. Sapna Das, who broke that story, is now joining in with more details about what the government is telling the RBI. Sapna, over to you.
Probably the government is trying to find out whether the banking regulator has failed in its role in terms of detecting the PNB fraud. The communication entails questions raised to the RBI on 5 counts. Basically, they want to know, the government wants to know if there have been lapses in terms of the regulatory, supervisory, auditory issues, powers, inspection of branches, including the overseas branches, and also cybersecurity related issues. So the government wants to know from Reserve Bank of India whether there have been whether they have noticed any lapses on these 5 accounts, and if yes, they should be reported to the government. Well, we have been given to understand that the Reserve Bank of India may come back to the government after it has done its due diligence with the banks involved. The government is also very clear about the fact that the regulatory and supervisory role rests squarely with the Reserve Bank of India. They are empowered under the Act. Probably all this is pointing towards the fact that the government is trying to, kind of raise a question mark whether RBI has failed or not. It remains to be seen how this really goes forward. But just a quick point, in every public sector bank, for example, there is an RBI nominee as well as a government nominee. So it remains to be seen how this really goes forward.
Thank you very much for that, Sapna. It's a very ugly situation to be in. So is the government as shareholder responsible, or is RBI as regulator responsible? If it happened in a private sector, if these frauds were prevalent in private sector banks as well, then the regulator would be responsible, because regulator regulates all banks. If it is happening only in banks owned by one kind of shareholder, then perhaps the shareholder will also have to take the blame. But it'll be interesting how this blame game goes forward. The final headline for the day: steel sector was in focus. Tata Steel confirmed to CNBC TV18, our own story, that it is in the fray for Bhushan Steel's assets. Experts, however, sparred over the equity, the residual equity value of Bhushan Steel shares. That stock ended in upper circuit, while Tata Steel lost close to 6% on fears that it will take on too much debt. Let's listen to some of the important corporate honchos in this space. TV Narendran of Tata Steel, Sajjan Jindal of JSW, and of course Neeraj Singhal of Bhushan Steel.
What made Tata Steel offer more than earlier? It is quite 40% above the first bid that you had put in for Bhushan Steel.
I don't think there's any first bid and later bid. I think the media talked of multiple numbers. So I don't want to comment on the specific numbers, but we'll wait to hear from the IRP and then we will comment. But yes, these assets we have been interested right from the beginning, because they're in the eastern region, and we believe that there's a lot of synergy we can get out of these assets.
And will the payment be upfront or staggered? In how many years?
I won't comment on that. We've submitted our bid. There are many details in the bid. I wouldn't like to comment on that till we have a formal discussion with the IRP.
By when do you expect formalization?
I don't know. I think we were told that we may hear something this week, so we'll wait for that.
The employees have a lot of sentimental value for the company, and since they built it, and it's so they put in a bid, and I think it could be a good bid. And it could be, they've offered a lot of equity to the banks, which I think it's a good move. Seeing the upturn in the steel industry, which is going to happen, and it is happening, and in the last 6 to 8 months, about 10,000 rupees has the prices in steel industry has gone up. And going forward, even globally, since China is cutting their production because of various reasons, environmental and so on, the steel industry will, I feel, will do well now. And so the bank should have the benefit of the upturn also now.
Sir, and if we talk about, you're bidding for distressed assets, what is it right now that you're looking forward to?
Well, there are lots of assets in steel and power and infrastructure. So these are whatever comes in falls in our area.
Sir, but Tatas have outbid you both on power and Bhushan assets.
In steel, Bhushan Steel and Bhushan Power, yeah.
So do you think you were not aggressive enough there?
No, we were quite aggressive, but they were much more aggressive than us.
Would you be just happy to be with Monnet assets right now? And
We will have to be satisfied with that.
so what would be your next stage of expansions be, sir?
We'll see that. I mean, I can't right now. I don't know, but next phase we will see.
Okay, so there is Tata Steel, alleged winner of the bid. There's Bhushan Steel and then there's JSW Steel, which continues to be a player. Alleged is the key word. We've got a question now. Jaykumar Sanjeevan has a question on Bhushan Steel. We don't get this often. He's got 10,000 shares of Bhushan Steel. His cost is 76 rupees a share. He's been holding the stock for a year and wants to know if he should continue holding or sell. My God. 10,000 shares cost at 76 rupees and 30 paise. Prakash, let me come to you. What would you tell him?
So, I mean, this is really being very convinced about a story that somebody would have to buy so much of a big, quantity and then that too at this rate. But I think given the way things are, if he gets anywhere close to his buy price, he should probably look at booking out, because I don't see, given the residual shareholding, finding great value as a possibility that he's going to, get something which is spectacularly higher than 76. So he's lucky that things are kind of shaping up very well for minority shareholders at this point in time of Bhushan, but it could be short-lived. So I mean, make the most of it. Be close to the exit gate. You get your price close to your price. Maybe another circuit could probably help. But don't expect any great returns out of this investment. In fact, it's just that you're getting back your capital after a long wait.
Yep, it's extremely confusing exactly what will happen. I guess what Mr. Narendran just said is the word that we have to wait for. We don't know the bid. If the bid has something in terms of writing down the value of the current equity holders, then things will be very different. What is the bid? I don't think an opinion is possible.
Correct,
unless we know the bid itself. But, well, just a word from you, Ashwini. What would be the best steel stock to own now?
See, the problem is that steel stocks are best to own when they are going out of business. When they are outbidding each other and buying stuff at the top of the cycle. Chorus was bought at the top of the cycle. So I am not a great fan of steel stocks. Obviously, if the global markets turn, they could have another rally. But will they, double and triple from here? I don't think so.
All right. Well, on that view, Ashwini and Prakash, thank you very much for joining us with all those answers to our viewers' questions. And thank you for watching this edition of Markets Today Talk Back.